Stay on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Had another day of kind of basically driving around the whole city of Milwaukee, strangely. So, fun, adventurous, places I've never been to. So
That sounds fun. Yeah, I also drove around Columbus, so we had a very similar work day today, and that's sports for you, right? And
Exactly.
we're both in the midst of some seasons. So, and we talk about sports on this podcast. We talk about football specifically, and we are going to talk through some late round sleepers. We're also going to give a bit of a preseason recap. But first, we have some league news to discuss. We're going to start on kind of a sad and pretty terrifying note. Brian Robinson, the Commanders' rookie running back who had won the job from Antonio Gibson, was shot in an armed robbery attempt yesterday. Actually, right after their preseason game, I want to say, correct? Like they played
Pretty similar, yeah.
Yeah, like it was like a couple hours later. Most are projecting that he will be out for most of the season. The gunshot wounds are not life-threatening, but they were to his glute and I believe his lower leg is what the report came through as. It's interesting because there was just a debate. We just talked about it last week about Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson and what that outlook was. What do you think the Commanders are going to do now? Is it Gibson or are they bringing in a guy?
I mean, it's Gibson. Gibson was always going to be kind of involved anyway, so I think it's just strictly Gibson and McKissick now, and depending on what they're hearing, maybe they bring in somebody like Sony Michel or, someone to kind of help carry some of the load as like a pure runner, where McKissick can't really do that. So we'll see with that. But, I mean, I would expect him to be out at least half the year. I mean, I get it. Like, it's not like he, completely, tore something, but we really don't know the extent of, the injury now, and they didn't put him on season in the IR, but I don't think they would yet. Like, they're still trying to figure it out and get cleared and see how, surgeries go and everything. So I don't envision this completely taking him out for the year, but it's going to be pretty close.
Yeah. And obviously, we're very glad he's okay. We jumped right into the football aspect of it. This sucks, and it was very, very dumb. And you just hope for a speedy recovery, and you hope to see him on a football field this year because he was looking good. And as someone who we were not Brian Robinson fans, but when you flip on the preseason game, it looks like he might have cut weight from college. He looked a little more nimble, and it's just a bummer. I hope he's able to return before the end of the season.
Yeah, not the worst case, because obviously this is the worst case, but for football reasons, what may suck for him is this team is going to be really bad, and he might not be ready till week 12 or 13, and they might just shut him down. Just let him practice, obviously, and continue to get healthy and work through it, but there's going to be most likely no reason to rush him back or, play in the last 3 games, except for more like, hey, well, he's back, kind of like a positive end of the season kind of thing. So
Right.
I'm not sure, that's good and all, but I think that's a little bit of almost like bad taste marketing from a team. So I don't really like that stuff usually.
It's the Commanders. They're known for that.
It's true.
So we'll see. And Ron Rivera is not very good with some of this stuff. But I will say Ron Rivera, the whole Commanders brass, like the GM, his family, they all saw him in the hospital last night, which was cool. But yeah, just a bummer, and happened probably in the middle of some people having their fantasy drafts. So if you drafted over the weekend, like, I mean, it sucks. You wasted a pick probably because there's no reason to stash Brian Robinson in redraft leagues right now. So another guy that there's no reason to stash, in my opinion, in redraft leagues, Jimmy Garoppolo. He was extended, restructured. He's pretty much taking what it boils down to be is a 1 year, $6.25 million deal with a no trade clause. So he kind of gets to dictate where his next move is to be the 49ers backup. It sounds like there were no trade suitors, no trade partners. They didn't want to cut him because they know that their rival Seattle Seahawks were probably going to sign him because he is better than Geno and Drew Lock. And so this is kind of a move that allows him to kind of pick where his next destination is while he gets to remain with a job on the team. Randy, do you think he is going to take Trey Lance's job this year?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think he still gets traded this year. Like, just now, this, like, it kind of like it extends the window. So now they have till the trade deadline. He has a little bit more of a team-friendly contract, and now it's a little bit personal friendly to him as well. And it's also incentivizes him to get out of the 49ers organization to get more of the incentives in the deal. So I do think the trade happens. At this point, the suitors, I mean, the Browns would probably be the name one because they're not going to trade to Seattle. So the Browns would probably be the name one. I think there was a chance for the Jets as well, depending on, if there was a setback with Zach Wilson, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. So they're probably out unless something else happens. So at that point, you're at injuries. So we can't predict that. So I have no idea. Yeah.
The first starting quarterback that goes down, I think Jimmy would welcome a trade. I think he wants to play. I think, too, obviously fantasy Twitter went kind of nuts about this, and the football world kind of did because some people and Mike Silver kind of suggested that this is the 49ers hedging their bet on Trey Lance. I don't see it as that really at all. I think what it is you have a backup that knows the system. So if Trey Lance were to get hurt today, you have a guy that can go start the season. They've done it. They know that. He's not going to take snaps away from Trey Lance. They're committed to Trey Lance. He was the 3rd overall pick. There's the whole Tua Ryan Fitzpatrick thing that I've seen kind of tossed out there. That's not going to happen in San Francisco.
I think people tend to forget that the 49ers mortgaged their future for Trey Lance. They traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. Yeah. He is their guy.
Yeah. You can't hedge that. You can't hedge that with a Jimmy Garoppolo backup deal. Like, that's you can't.
Your hedge is trading Jimmy G,
right?
To try, like, hopefully for a second or something. Like, that's the hedge. Yeah. Like, Trey Lance is the quarterback for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, for better or worse. If he doesn't work out, there's a good chance most likely both are looking for new jobs, and I don't see that happening. I think they're going to put everything in place around it to make sure that doesn't happen for obvious reasons. And Shanahan's a good play caller, especially schematically. We know what he can do with the running quarterback, and that's what Trey Lance is probably one of the best ones out there. So just plain simple, without even playing an NFL, full game yet.
Yeah. Well, he's gotten a couple. Two total.
But still count.
Yeah. And he got better every snap he was out there, for what it's worth. I think Trey Lance is fine. Don't panic, folks. Alexander Madison is being shopped around the league. Apparently, at least 12 suitors were calling the Vikings to see what they were looking for in a potential deal. Madison, I wouldn't say he was outplayed. What I will say is I think the Vikings feel pretty good about Kenny Nwangwu and Ty Chandler behind Dalvin Cook, to the point that they know that capitalizing on what Alexander Madison can offer in a trade back, or what they'll get in a trade back for him, would supersede him just being Dalvin Cook's backup. So I think, too, I think there are quite a few teams that he makes sense for. What would be your favorite fantasy landing spot for Madison right now?
Uh, I don't know if I have one. Like, I'm
Mine would
pretty
be,
like
mine would be the Saints as the power back with Kamara.
Mark
Because
Ingram has looked good.
he has, but I don't trust it for a full season. And I
That's
also think
fair. I just
I
don't like for that regard. Like the Chargers are my favorite. If
that's
I'm using him as a pure power back guy and
yeah.
change of pace, like that's where I would want him. I think for that same reason, I think Buffalo would be kind of exciting because I think he would have a chance of kind of taking over the backfield more than anyone else in that backfield this year, at least. Um, Technically, Commanders make sense now, but
They do.
that's not going to happen.
No.
Being the
No.
NFC, I doubt that it. They would probably have to pay up, and I just don't see it happening, especially with trading for other people recently.
Well,
I really don't.
and any
Yeah,
trade for Madison is essentially saying we're going to extend him and have him be our main piece because he's on his last year of his rookie deal. So
depending. I mean, if you trade a third, I think that's what that means. But if you trade a fifth, then it's kind of like, okay, well, let's see if he's worth it. His extension would be cheaper than any other running back we'd sign
right.
just because he hasn't had a full prove it. So it's kind of like that. Like obviously, I don't want him going to Houston because Damien Pierce. I don't think there's a lot of teams that he wouldn't make sense at. So
Yeah.
just because they have two backs already or more.
Yeah. My other favorite, the Panthers are wheeling and dealing right now. I think the Panthers to be the power back behind McCaffrey. He's way
But
better than Chuba Hubbard, but they seem to really like Chuba, and
he's a better power back than Chuba.
I agree. Yeah, I
But
think Chuba's
Chuba in the
better at
role
space.
that they want him in is possibly better from what we've
Yeah.
seen. I mean, Madison's been an okay pass catcher, but they also have, I
Deontay
want
Foreman.
to say Foreman, who is more of a power back there. I think they like that trio. So
They do.
again, it's an okay landing spot, but it's like, is it work perfectly? Probably not. There's only a
Yeah.
few that it works like perfectly, but if there's that many people reaching out, there's a reason.
Yeah. 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 It's an interesting thing to monitor. I think too, Ty Chandler, Nwangwu, I think they're pretty decent dynasty stashes right now. So if you're playing in dynasty leagues and they're out there, go scoop them, especially Chandler. Nwangwu is probably already on a roster for what it's worth. But
Yeah.
okay. Laviska Shenault, we just talked about the Panthers. Laviska Shenault is actually the backup running back there. He was traded to the Carolina Panthers, the worst 100-target season in recent memory. He had 100 targets last year. No one cares about it. Even his own team didn't care about it and said, see you later, bud. Fantasy relevance? No.
No.
Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page there. I would argue that he's Shi Smith's backup and just insurance if one of their top 4 receivers go down. So, Geno Smith won the Seattle starting job because Drew Lock imploded after. So he threw an interception, then he came back with a dime touchdown, and then he had the worst couple quarters of his life, I think, because he had a chance to go out there and win the job, and he failed to do so. So Geno Smith is the starter.
For week one.
For week one. I would not be shocked if that flips by week 5.
Yeah. They were very specific in saying he was the starter for week one. He was the starter for the season and moving forward.
Right.
He's the starter for week one after this week. So, and to be fair, week 2, Geno Smith had an awful game. Week 3, Drew Luck had an awful game. So they're both kind of trading, like, well, no, you look bad on TV. No, you look bad on TV. So I don't really know what's going on, which also sucks because they have a plethora of weapons and a rebuilding offensive line with some promising pieces and some good running backs. So whoever's actually starting has a chance to at least be, not necessarily fantasy relevant, but they can move the ball.
Yeah.
It's just, I think this team's kind of bad all around. And if I'm expecting as a team to possibly have to throw it more in the second half, I want Drew Lock because that's the only way you're getting back in the game.
Yeah. I agree. I will say, though, their rookie offensive linemen have played outstanding in the
Yeah.
preseason. Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross have looked phenomenal, and that makes sense. It's crazy what happens when you put athletic offensive linemen that can move really well into a system that requires offensive linemen to be athletic and move really well.
Or
So,
just invest in the offensive line at all in the draft. It's
yeah,
crazy.
they did a
Now
good
you
job.
have 3 young, high potential linemen. Obviously, one's been drafted for a couple years, but
Yeah,
still.
yeah, and it's looking up, even if the quarterback situation isn't fixed there. But yeah, which it will be next year. They have 2 firsts, so they're going to make things happen, I think.
Yeah, and it's always better to have everything else figured out and then plan a quarterback in a good situation, a la Bengals. It's happened multiple times.
Chargers, yeah,
Chargers, yeah, they had to fix the
kind
line
of.
too, but
And the defense. They weren't in the best situation, but okay. Last piece of news before we get to a preseason recap of sorts. Sony Michel was cut today. He looked pretty bad in the preseason, which I found to be interesting. He ran for almost 1,000 yards last year and was the leading rusher on the Super Bowl winning team last year. So very strange. I'm kind of bummed. I think that what this is Mostert looks so good in the preseason that it was a battle between those two, and Mostert clearly won it. He looks fast, healthy,
yeah.
all the above. So
I'm more surprised that they cut him and so far have kept
Gaskin and Ahmed,
Gaskin and Ahmed. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's
I don't. First of all, I don't think they keep both of those guys anyways. Like I think one of them's definitely gone, and to me that's Savon Ahmed because
yeah.
at least Gaskin's a bit of do it all back. So we'll see how
Yeah.
it goes, but
Well, and
crazy.
I think they will roster 4, and I think it's Zaquandre White, who also has looked good in the
He has a
preseason,
chance.
and they drafted him in the 7th. So cheap. If this is the 49ers model, White could just be their RB3 and they'll be good with that. So we'll see what happens. But I think Sony Michel's going to find a job for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's gonna wait for Madison's market. It's gonna wait for Hunt's market. It's got or Dearness Johnson for that matter.
Damian
Like they
Harris, too, maybe.
Damien Harris possibly. Pretty much any other running back that actually has name value, their marker would go first easily. Which I think at this point, Damien Harris is probably off any kind of market with the injuries they've had in that running back room. I think it's going to be a 50-50 timeshare there, just pure split.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's get to a preseason recap. We kind of just took some hot topic news items. We've probably talked about these a little bit, so we're kind of going to go through these fairly quickly before we get to some sleepers. For the sleeper section, we're going to go kind of position by position, talk about why we think this could be a good late round pick. Really, we're going anything 10th and past that. But first, preseason recap. It's worth noting, and I typed this first, of course, but Justin Fields had an outstanding preseason that is kind of going under discussed because of all of the hate pieces that have been written about the Bears and Justin Fields and what that offense can be. But that new offense is showing off all of Justin Fields' strengths. He is capitalizing. I believe he went 20 of 30 in the preseason. It looked fantastic against the Browns this past weekend. So, what were you going to say? I saw you.
I was going to say, along with that, the new offense seems to look a lot like the old offense, and the fact that they're using one back named David Montgomery. With the starters out there, Khalil Herbert rotated in for a grand total of 2 snaps after Montgomery's a little tired. So while I think there is some value there still, obviously, I think we're going to get the same old kind of workhorse running back role from here. Even though we kind of already talked about the guy, I think Herbert's going to be a little bit like Alexander Madison and, be a very good backup that never matters unless the guy gets hurt.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
We've been people overdraft Madison every year for the same thing, man.
It's true. I'm still curious to see it because that was the first run that Montgomery's had in the preseason. So you wonder if this was okay. Herbert got the first game fully. I think he got a little bit of the second game, but then Montgomery got most of the third game. Montgomery's leading the backfield no matter what. Like Herbert was never going to overtake Montgomery. I do think Herbert works in a little bit more. But Montgomery's a better pass catcher too. I mean, that's the thing. Like Montgomery is very much so a 3-down back. So it's interesting. I don't think Getsy's had really a guy like this in his previous play calling career. So,
well, and you have so little pass catchers. You like to have your running back not really be a good pass catcher out there for even 30% of the snaps is going to be difficult because you're basically saying he's going to block or run or take, a swing pass,
and Herbert can't even catch those sometimes. So he's got pretty bad hands. So that's a good note. Good pickup. We didn't even put that in here. You're just off the top of your head, man.
I like Monty.
Yeah, I know you do. I do too. I'm interested to see what this looks like. All right, next piece of hot news. I don't know. Isaiah Pacheco. I keep calling him Pacheco. He's the hot name, but it's kind of looking like Jerick McKinnon might be the pass catching back. This is all behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know that Pacheco has gotten some work. He's looked kind of explosive. He's very much so a project running back. He doesn't really know how to play the position. I think it's worth noting that we're not going to talk about him on our sleepers, right? You don't have any interest in talking about him?
No, he's had a good camp. He's looked good a lot of times, but he is still very much a project back, and he's an older project back, so that does not bode well. At this point, I haven't seen enough to say that his career won't amount to, much more than, Darrell and Damien Williams, just
I think
guys that become a good backup in a couple of years after they've been in. And we talked about him too much. And I know there was multiple Pacheco owners trying to bail out over the last 2 weeks, trying to get a second out of him or something. It's because you saw what was going on. Clyde is by far the best back. McKinnon was by far the second best back we saw, especially all around, which is what the Chiefs need. They don't need just a guy running up the middle the whole time.
Yeah, and I would even argue that while Pacheco flashed the speed, the burst, and all that stuff, I would argue that on a running back basis, Ronald Jones was still better than him when he was out there.
A good amount of time, especially vision-wise.
Yeah, that's another guy I hope finds a role because I think he's getting cut if he hasn't already while we're on this. Yeah, he probably won't. Speaking of old backs that need to develop, we're going to jump down to a quarterback, but Malik Willis. People went a little nuts after his third preseason game. He finished the preseason completing less than 60% of his passes. He threw 2 touchdowns and an interception. He was fun to watch, though. He runs the ball and he runs fast, and those were all the things that we kind of knew he could do. There are people comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. There are people saying that he should overtake Ryan Tannehill. It's wild out here. Even in Dynasty, I think right now is prime sell Malik Willis time, because if you can ride this hype and kind of get out of it, if you have him, it does not look good from a passing standpoint. He has a long way to go. Are you selling Malik Willis right now? Do you think there's a chance that he starts a game this year if Tannehill doesn't get hurt?
No, because the Titans are a good team, and they're going to be. Well, I don't think they're necessarily like a strong wild card contender. Like they would obviously be fighting, but they're in an all-out blood battle with the Colts for this division, and I don't see them, being down enough that it would matter to make a change of the guard. I think Malik Willis is getting way overvalued right now. So I guess if you're getting, what would you be willing to sell him for? It would be first plus for me, because there's a chance Malik Willis is the starting quarterback of the Titans next year. And if that happens, he's worth easily a first plus, because starting quarterbacks are worth the first, easy. So, and a guy with rushing upside is just easily first plus. So if I'm not getting that value, I'm not trading him. I think an accurate representation of what we saw this preseason would be kind of rookie year Jalen Hurts, to where we saw what we wanted on the ground. We know he's that dynamic and that special, and he can run it. But we saw very, very inaccurate plays at the quarterback position as an actual passer. And well, I think Willis, showed a little bit better arm talent than Hurts necessarily all the time, especially college and rookie year. He was supposed to be, his best case, a little bit more accurate version of, Lamar Jackson as like a final form, and I don't think he's anywhere near that, by the way, but I don't think we've seen anywhere close to that. And even like Lamar's worst season, I think he's been a little bit better accuracy. So it's really bad. And you can't replicate Lamar on the ground, even though Malik is kind of close. It's just
he's damn close. That's the one thing.
I said he's kind of close.
Yeah.
When Michael Vick says, "Shit, I don't think I could do that," I'm gonna let Lamar just be the top of the tier.
Yes, fair
just
enough.
saying.
Bulked up Lamar is going to be terrifying for DBs this year. It's going to be crazy.
So that's kind of more of my I think there's a lot of upside to Malik, but do not think you've seen enough that he's going to ever touch the field this year.
That's the thing. So, I would hedge my bet that the Titans are going to be too good to go get a really good quarterback next year, I think. They're going to be at worst middle of the pack. The Titans are better than they were last year out on defense, maybe not on offense, AJ Brown. On defense, their defense was a top 10 unit last year, and they were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. People forget this. I know it was because of, a lot of different circumstances, and they probably didn't deserve that. They didn't play like it. And Tannehill was bad, but I just think that the Titans are going to be in the middle of the pack, so that's where you see a path for Malik starting. But if he plays anywhere near what we just season, they will go out and they will sign a veteran, and even if they want to move off Tannehill. But I think they would then just stay in hell. And so that's where I would have and say, well, I'll get 22nd, knowing I can probably get starting wide receiver 2 range personally. But also I know that that's risky because he does become started. I sold too early, and I get it. But it's just a situation I don't have any Malik though, so for what it's worth.
Yeah. It's just that's my thing. If any quarterback on my roster is a starting quarterback, even if it's a backup that became a starter, I'm getting at least a second for that guy to trade him. So a guy that has shown promise and does have a clear path to become the starter next year. Obviously, there's many things that could change that, but as of right now, contract-wise and hierarchy in the the organization, he has a clear path to become the starter next year. And arguably, what we've seen from Tannehill, Malik could do that, with a year of seasoning, and provide more effort on the ground. So, which could open up a bit more of Derrick Henry on his last leg of his career. So it does work out theoretically. And that rushing upside does mean he's going to be a top 15 quarterback, most likely, even if he's kind of dog shit through the air. A la Jalen Hurts for at least the first year and kind of last year a bit at times. Definitely improved. But so that's kind of my point. It's going to take a good amount for me to move on from him now because this is not his peak value. If there's a chance he starts, this is not his peak value.
But then wouldn't you argue, so say the Titans then do go out, they move on from Tannehill, but they bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, for example, which net negative, I think. I think Tannehill's better than Garoppolo for what it's worth, for what they want to do.
Especially for this offense. But that's the thing, though. If they bring in Jimmy G, I think most people going into the year are going to be hyping up Malik to take the job.
Yeah.
Because of what he does on the ground. So I think you'd still get more than you would right now. That's why fair. It would be a first plus at least for me to
what about
really
Baker?
Even consider it.
Baker instead of Jimmy G next year.
Could be, but I just sold Baker for what?
A lot.
Baker and 2/3 for 2 firsts.
Yeah. It's a very good trade. Well done. But Also a fair trade. All right. Next piece of news. Teams have very different approaches to the preseason now, which wasn't always the case. There was always kind of that dress rehearsal thing. This year, the Vikings, for example, sat 33 players. They sat all of their starters and pretty much all of their immediate second string that are going to be important. A lot of teams chose to do that. Some teams did throw their starters out there for a little bit. I just find it interesting. I wonder what the preseason looks like moving forward. They've already cut a game. I assume when they add another game, they're going to cut a second preseason game once we get to an 18-game season. Noteworthy, I think. Did you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think it completely makes sense. There was nobody that's in position battles or we needed to see stuff for, or the teams needed to see stuff for, that didn't play. It was all your first teamers pretty much, but a lot of teams still threw out the first team, especially if they're a little bit new look offenses like the Chiefs. They ran a first team 2 of the 3 weeks, I believe, at least for a drive or two. So there's a lot of that. I mean, and then there's teams like the Bills who saw everyone, including Isaiah McKenzie, who's like their clear slot now. They're like, well, he's not touching the field too. So it kind of answered a lot of questions for us. And I think we're going to get a little bit of that both ways. But we saw a lot more sitting from playoff teams last year than we did the teams that were kind of struggling. And I think that makes more sense because maybe that extra week worth of rest is going to make all the difference, because you're trying to fight – when you're that good of a team, you're just trying to fight injuries at this point, because the Bills are making the playoffs. It's going to take injuries for them not to make it, just plain and simple, in my opinion. So It's a lot of stuff like that. And
yeah,
I would rather my studs not get hurt in the preseason too. So I really don't care.
Yeah, like Deontay Johnson getting banged up in the final preseason game. That sucks.
Making a fucking Mike Williams fantastic ass catch. That literally, I was like, oh my God, he's Mike Williams, but much smaller. Holy fuck.
Much smaller. Well,
catch. He literally did the Mike Williams of like, well, I think I might die here, but I'm catching this fucking ball.
Yeah. And then he died, but he's okay. He is okay. Yeah, and TJ Watt got hurt in that game. Just crazy. Yeah.
Which I don't know. Like, TJ should not have played. See, that's what I'm saying.
Why was he out there?
Deontay playing, it kind of makes sense because you're doing a quarterback battle. TJ Watt should not have played.
No, that's insane. Yeah, that's insane. Next one, Marcus Mariota looked good enough to keep Ritter on the bench. My friend Jeff Bell is covering the Falcons for his training camp reports, and he keeps telling me that Mariota is going to start probably for the full season unless he gets hurt. I do think that the report came out that they want Ritter. They do want to see Ritter at some point in 2022. But if the Falcons are winning football games and have a chance in the NFC to be a wild card team, I know you shake your head. I mean, 2 weeks left. They only had 7 wins. I understand. But with 2 weeks left, they were still battling. The NFC is still pretty bad. I think there's a shot that Mariota just gets the full season and they have to evaluate Ritter on the fly. But if that's the case, then they're not high enough to get a top 5 pick, probably, right? So then you might be rolling with Ritter at that point for a year. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't – this team's not good. A lot of this team's wins last year was just Matt Ryan literally just gunslinging it and barely getting the win. And they actually could have won more games last year. They lost a lot of close games as well. I think this team is worse than it was last year with at least veteran-wise. Like, obviously, you had in Drake London. I think the receiving core is a little bit better. But you still lost Russell Gage, too, which would have made this better. You lost Ridley, which would have made this better. The offensive line is a bit worse. And I think the running back room's better, but barely. And it's really just because you have young legs in Algier.
And he's not even starting technically at this. Like,
no, he's not going to start, but he's going to play. That's the kind of thing. And I think you got a decent backup tight end, but it's just one of those, like, and the defense lost, the linebacker, D line, it's not like perfect transition. And I think Matt Ryan gave this team a lot more wins than they should have had last year. I think Mariota won't be able to sling it like that.
No, he can't. We know that.
I just don't. I don't think they're in playoff race, especially like week 13. Yeah. And at that point, you're like, well, fuck it. Let's throw Ritter out there. And they do have a very late bye too at week 14.
Well, shoot. And honestly, even if they're in somewhat of a playoff race, that's still a good time to throw Ritter in, because then if this is the guy, he's going to lead us to the playoffs here. We've got 4 games left. Let's do it. Something like that. It depends on what they think they are, though. And I don't know what they think they are. I think they should have tanked harder, personally. But they're failing at that. So Damien Pierce looks like the best rookie pick. He is gonna start for the Texans week 1. Lovie Smith refused to say that today for competitive advantage. I mean, come on, man.
He's an old coach.
Yeah, we know. But he looked absolutely fantastic the other night, and he has throughout the entire preseason. We knew this. We were very high on Damien Pierce. I don't know why I ranked him so low when I actually put out my rookie rankings after he was in my top 5 or 6 in my draft rankings. I'm going to stop doing that.
I think you got a little bit of Texans bias there, and what you should have done the opposite. It's been oh shit, it's just Marlon Mack. Okay, well, he could probably beat that, which he has, and that's actually not to say that Mack has looked bad, because he really hasn't. It's just
he's looked good too.
Pierce has looked electric, whereas Mack has kind of looked efficient, more of it. So that's I think both get a run. It's just if Pierce continues this, he is easily just taking the whole backfield.
Yeah.
Whereas the start, it's going to be a little bit more of a split.
Would you draft Pierce, knowing what we know now, in the first round of a rookie draft now?
I'm trying to think what the back end of the first was.
Jameson Williams.
Jameson was a little bit earlier too.
Pickens, Sky Moore.
I still think I'd take him behind that.
Me too.
Yeah. Just basically because all the wide receivers are high drafted. And wide receivers have a longer, term outlook. And while Damien Pierce has looked really good, that does not necessarily deter the Texans from getting another running back sometime the next year. So whether it's free agency on a cheap deal or the draft. So it's just how it is.
I think they're going to draft Bijan Robinson next year, and it's going to kill everyone who has Pierce. It feels like such a Texans move to say, hey, we're going to draft a first-round running back. You know why? Because we have the Browns first, too, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's tough to do that with the roster they have.
Oh, I know.
That's the problem.
I feel like they won't care, but also if Pierce is that good, they won't. So it's interesting. I think I'd still take him in the second at this point.
Yeah, I think he was kind of middle or back end of the second. I think he's firmly 201, or very back end of the first, depending on team need.
I'd draft him before Pickett still. I don't care.
I wouldn't do that.
I understand. There's insulated value with quarterbacks, but I don't want Pickett on my team.
Again, if Pickett starts, he's worth the first plus. So
yeah. Hey, you could maybe get that. I saw Pierce go for that recently, so let's roll.
I'm not doing that.
I get it. Speaking of what we thought would be a first-round rookie pick, Isaiah Spiller lost out his competition to be the backup running back for the Chargers, and he is operating as third and sometimes fourth string behind Larry Roundtree. Joshua Kelly is the backup and looks to be the power back for the Chargers. It's kind of a bummer. I hope that Spiller does. Yeah, Kevin knows. Pickett is trash, Andy. He knows.
He is trash. I didn't say that. But you could trade Sam Darnold last year for a first in most leagues. So I'm just fucking saying.
It is true.
The starting quarterback's worth the first. I don't know what to say.
It's true. Back to Isaiah Spiller. Do you think that his value is like toast if Kelly keeps this job all year? Like,
No. I mean, his value this year is completely toast right now because he, even if Twitter did say he's RB1, he is the better complement in this backfield to Eckler, not just because of, like, obviously Kelly has shown kind of better in between tackles right now, but the best time for this running back this running back in the last 10 years was Eckler and Melvin Gordon, where both could catch passes, but Melvin Gordon was better in between the tackles, and obviously Spiller can catch passes. So I think he is eventually the RB2. It's just I think the injury kind of took him out of the race, and maybe by the end of the year he's increased to that role, but I don't think Kelly's a long stay for this team, and neither is Roundtree. So I would rather have Spiller than Kelly right now.
I get it. I'm just a little bummed. Either way, Eckler could finish as the RB1 because I'm not inspired by any of these guys. And
he could, but then again, there's Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, and Alvin Kamara.
And DeAndre Swift, for what it's worth.
And Alvin Kamara.
No, you wanted to throw him in
there.
Okay.
That's so quickly because we didn't put it on here. The Saints offense, when they kind of had their dress rehearsal this last week, looked fucking good. And it was carried by Kamara, who, if you look at the box score, didn't look as good. But if you actually watched it, he had multiple plays get called back for penalties where he just absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
He looks electric. This offense looks good. It looks like they're going to feature him and let the wide receivers be more of a complement, which is good because Michael Thomas, it's going to take some time to get back to form, I think. And obviously Olave is getting used to the league. Landry, kind of the same, getting back to form. He did not look like himself last year. Seen some decent things in the preseason, but this offense is carried through Kamara. And while Ingram did have 2 touchdowns, I believe, in the preseason game, one of them was because Kamara literally ran for like 40 yards and got dragged down. Yeah. And he literally got taken out. That's going to happen. We've had multiple top-end running backs say in the past, like, no, if you run for 40 you get stopped, you need that break. We rotate for sure.
Yeah, I've been in on the Saints. I'm in on the Saints to make the playoffs pretty easily because I think their defense is still really freaking good too.
It's going to be close. They're a fringe team for me.
For sure. All right. Quickly, these last 3. We'll couple the next 2. Both Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett look like low-level starters. They're operating a very safe offense, and it seems like they do not want to go away from it. I think Matt Canada sucks as an offensive coordinator because I think if you can't open up the third level of the field, which they knew they couldn't if they drafted Pickett, I just don't see what the upside of this offense is. I think it's going to hurt Najee Harris, who also has a Liz Frank injury that he's recovering from, which we didn't even put in the news because it was such a one-off weird comment.
Where he played in the
I know
there's no way he plays if it's that bad, but that's why we left it off. But this and into the third level comment, you have, I mean, Deontay can get open deep, obviously, but Claypool and Pickens excel getting open deep and excel as jump ball receivers. And if you can't make that an efficient part of your offense, this is going to be Deontay being the top 12 receiver again because he's going to absolutely dominate what this offense looks like so far.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting. I think they're going to get creative with Claypool. I do think that Pickens is a good receiver. The hype never really stopped for Pickens. That's the next item. Probably should have in just looking at what the quarterbacks are. And Mitchell Trubisky is going to start week 1. All signs are pointing to that. I think that's the better of the 2 options still right now. But I really don't see much difference and don't see why they wouldn't just roll with Pickett at this point. Because if you're going to run this stupid safe offense, then just do it with your rookie and let him get reps. I guess it's my
argument. Well, yeah, it's weird. It's almost like a point of like you kind of promised him the job, so you're giving him the shot, and then if he doesn't play well, you're like, well, there's the rookie. So, quick question. So, through the preseason and everything, who's a better blocker, Pickens or Claypool? Not not one-off push on the opposite side of the ball, but
Yeah,
just a better blocker.
I would argue Claypool in general, but I also think that Pickens, when engaged, can be one of the best blocking receivers in the NFL.
So that's going to be his biggest thing because Claypool's is more of a schemed up player. He's a high impact player. So he gets open the same way Pickens does deep as well and can make the plays like Pickens can. And he can work inside, whereas Pickens can't. So that's where Pickens is going to get snaps, in my opinion, is blocking. If he can consistently win that, because Deontay's not coming off the field because,
No.
he's just never coming off unless he needs a break. So, and you're not going to just put Pickens into block because then you're like, okay, well, it's a run. So even though obviously he can go deep, but so if he can continue to build on that blocking and that intensity, that's going to win him more snaps, which will obviously increase his fantasy output because he's got more chance and make Claypool a little bit more irrelevant, except for probably touchdown saving, for a lot of weeks where he's obviously still going to be schemed up in the red zone because he's very good in multiple assets there.
How often is this team in the red zone, man? That's where like
I think they move. I think they get first downs most drives. I just don't know if it's 4, 5, 6 touchdown. I think they get 1 or 2 most drives. Just because Najee is he's gonna
average just 3.2 a carry, and that's gonna be enough to get 10 yards on 3 downs, pretty much.
Deontay can catch a ball for 5 yards any play as long as the ball is in his area. His hands are the same as last year, not the year before.
I think you're just hoping that the defense puts them in optimal positions, though, because I don't think they're leading too many 75-yard touchdown drives. Like, I think they're a field goal kicking team.
Yes, which is as Browns fans can still win games. So we've seen that a lot over the last couple of years.
Yes, we have. You have to make the field goals, though, for what it's worth. 49ers backfield. A lot of people are kind of in a panic about Elijah Mitchell. He has a soft tissue injury. We talked about that last week, so I won't harp on that. But it's very much still his backfield. But Trey Sermon seems to have won the RB2 role. Came to camp. John Lynch said that he was the best player in camp. Beat reporters don't agree. It's a very strange thing happening in 49ers camp. I don't know that all of the beat reporters know what they're looking for in their number 2 running back, but it's interesting. Trey Sermon's going to make our sleepers list because I am intrigued by the injury opportunity. You want the 49ers RB1. If Mitchell were to go down with an injury, I think Sermon's the guy, and that's valuable.
Easy.
Yeah. Which is what he was drafted to do. The Ty Davis Price pick obviously scared people. He looks to be the RB3 or even 4 right now. Although he looked good. Everyone looks good in that scheme, so it's not worth noting. Okay. Anything else from the preseason that you want to discuss?
I guess Brown's offense under Brissett looks bad.
Atrocious. So bad. It would help with Nick Chubb, for what it's worth.
It would, yeah. Raiders offense looks efficient as hell, so that should be really good for fantasy. Brady's back. Did not look energetic in the press conference as a guy that was off for 2 weeks. So I think something
looked ill. Sunken face, like he may have just had COVID or something. I don't know.
He may have, but I really don't know. He also could have just had something really, not great in his personal life, and a lot of times people aren't, working out or eating or doing all that stuff during that time. And I assume that's kind of what it is. Obviously, I don't want to pry any further than that. Not that I really could. So it's just, it's something of note. It's a lot of the camp hasn't looked great in Tampa. They've had a lot of line issues, and then Brady kind of leaving, quote unquote, planned, but also mysteriously. It's not the best camp coming out from the Bucks, but there's so much talent, it won't matter. Like, they're going to make the playoffs. It's just if they're actual contenders or not is the question.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to our late round sleepers. Now, not all of these guys are worthy of a 10th round pick. We will kind of discuss kind of where these guys are going for what it's worth. And we're kind of going to power through them. We have a lot of names for you, and we'll give some justification for why they're on our list. There are a few that maybe Randy put on here or I put on here that we don't agree with. For example, Khalil Herbert. I'll start with him. I do think that Khalil Herbert is worth a late round draft pick. You can pretty much get him in the 15th, 16th, 17th, depending on how many rounds you have. And ultimately, he's one Montgomery injury away from a massive workload because the Bears offense will try to run the ball a lot, and their offensive line is set up to where the running back should be efficient. I have a lot of stock in this Bears offense being good, obviously with my belief in Justin Fields, but I think Herbert has a chance here.
So the reason I'm against Herbert is I don't pick people in this range for injury. I just don't. I don't pick my own handcuffs. I don't do any of that shit. I want someone that has value now and that, can keep growing in value depending on how the season goes. So like Trey Sermon, who is also kind of in that range, he is showing interest in having value during the year no matter what, because he's taken an RB2. There's a chance that they give the RB2 a little bit more work than they did last year because they're actually healthy this year, even if Mitchell deserves the whole role. So there's a chance he gets some run no matter what. And Khalil Herbert is going to get some plays, but he's never taking snaps from Montgomery, whereas Sermon could legitimately take snaps from Mitchell because he's running well and they feed the hot hand. Montgomery is going to keep coming back in the field because he's a better 3-down back, which is what this offense desperately needs this year with limited pass catchers.
I agree to an extent. I think if they are moving the ball, running the ball with Herbert on the field, and they aren't getting to third down, I think that there's a chance that they do ride the hot hand too in Chicago, where they give Herbert a series. How much value that has, though, I don't know.
Exactly. And if you're drafting Herbert thinking, hey, what injury, he's an RB2 for me every week, then you're less likely, especially, we're talking redraft here, you're way less likely to cut him then. And that's not what I want on the back end of my bench.
That's fair. Let's go to one we both agree on. Jerick McKinnon, is that a good one to go with?
Yeah.
You agree? Okay. Do you want to talk about Jerick McKinnon? Why you like him later?
Yeah, he is becoming like a predominant pass catching back. He ran okay during the playoffs last year and the season, but he was really electric through the passing game. Obviously, there's so much going on with Clyde last year that we're kind of just throwing out the window to a certain extent. He's looked better this year. We're expecting better things from him, but McKinnon's basically locked himself in as the RB2 and as a pass-catching RB2, so I think that has a good potential flex role every week. And then again, this is what I'm talking about. If Clyde gets hurt, McKinnon is the starting running back with Pacheco rotating in. There's not a split. It's McKinnon's the starter. So I think he gets some passing down work every game, and then he has a chance at an increased role. And I think, I would say, I would have J.D. McKissic kind of in that same breath. Whereas, especially now with the Brian Robinson, there's two backs here. We've seen this already. J.D. McKissic is a valuable fantasy option, plain and simple. And, if Gibson is not doing well or he is banged up, McKissic is in an absolute must start because he's basically the only back. And obviously, I think in that scenario, they have another back there, but he is going to get all of the work and all the passing work in that situation. And that's kind of the, again, some passing work each week and then high upside. And there's other guys here with that, but yeah, those two I kind of equate similarly, except one is the Chiefs, one is the Commanders.
Right. And no, that's a good point as well. Just kind of going along those same lines of talking about the pass catching backs. Nyheim Hines is probably once again one of my favorite late round looks. He's obviously going a little higher than those guys that we just talked about. You can get McKinnon in the last round. You can get McKissick in the last round. Hines is going in like the 13th, 14th range. Most places that I've seen. Is that around where you see him as well?
So on Sleeper, he is ADP 130. So that's, late 12th, 13th round, depending on your or 12th, 13th round, depending on your league size. I think he's probably the best actual running back and fantasy player on this list, especially for this year, with the only argument being James Robinson, who we'll just leap into there. He has looked healthy. He has looked kind of bursty, but not to his full extent yet. So I think he's playing week 1, and I think this is a split backfield with, I would assume, ETN getting a more predominantly of the pass load. Because Robinson is a good pass catching back, but it's a little bit along the lines of Fournette, where it's like, well, he got passes. He caught him and he ran for a couple yards. So I think he's going to get a lot of work, and it's going to be pure 50-50. But like Hines is going to get 30% of the work, 40% like of the snaps, and he's going to get 90% of the passing snaps because he's very good. All the talk out of camp is he's looking great, and they're going to use him efficiently this year, especially while they're trying to flesh out the wide receiver 2 role, which we'll get into. So I think those two are the highest picks here as well. They're 10th, 11th, 12th round. But they also offer immediate flex play right away.
Yeah. Another guy I think that's true for, Rashaad White. I know most people don't think this is true. I understand. But Rashaad White offers so much more than Leonard Fournette. The Bucs ran Fournette with the first team exclusively. But we know what the Bucs do with rookies, and it may just take a few more weeks. Rashaad White has looked good pass blocking. But when he starts to get on the field as the third down back, which I think could be as early as week 1, that is an immediate flex play. The pass catching back in a Brady-led offense is an immediate flex play. And then you couple in that he looked really good running the ball, and I think he is the RB2 over Keyshawn Vaughn. So
Well, that's kind of what I was expected there. I didn't want to just cut him off if he was kind of talking, but he kind of froze on my screen. So he kind of took off there. He was kind of expecting some weather, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm not quite sure what he got out there. But Rashaad White is a phenomenal pass catcher, phenomenal blocker. I think he is taking over the RB2 role, and I think he'll be a more consistent passing option for this offense. Especially in the second half of the year, which Brady is going to love. So I think he is definitely, maybe not early in the season flex play, but he will be a flex play for most of the season, I would say. Another rookie, Tyler Algier, we kind of talked about. Cordell Patterson's starting back. He's going to be used a lot, but Algier's the young legs, and he's actually looked not as, he's not Pierce level, but he's looked really good. So I think he continues to gain more of a role, which is a fun transition because Kenneth Gainwell is also here, who's going, pick 148. 14th round. he is getting a lot of high value touches in camp. So to me, that is a big thing. And I really want that, especially if he's getting a lot of the red zone touches. That's why, like, Sanders had 1,000 yards or whatever, but no touchdowns. We're all expecting him to get, a big uptick in that department. But if he doesn't, and that all goes to Gainwell, that's a good flex player for you because he's just continually getting more touches. And whether it's, not the same level, like the amount of touches, if he's getting high value touches and a good proportion of them each week, that's going to work well. Quickly, Darrell Henderson's looks good. He's looking a little bit more healthy. This is going to be a split backfield with Cam Akers be the lead. He's a high value handcuff with some big league flex appeal. We have Jamal Williams and Zamir White. They might get work. Jamal Williams, more than anything, he's a team leader and he's looked really good. So he's going to get some carries. But for me, that's a very late and deep league stash and playable person there. I'm going to kind of quickly go through some of these receivers. Again, I think Christian may be done, but I'm going to try and work through it otherwise. So Sky Moore, obviously a top-level rookie with a top-level offense, but he has gotten 0 starting snaps so far. So that's a guy, I think it's definitely a top option late in the draft, but it's definitely a little bit higher risk. He is going a little bit higher as well. I think I don't even think he's necessarily 10th plus round. Like, I think he's like 9th round as well. So you're going to have to pay up for him. Romeo Doubs, another rookie getting talked about a lot. There's some connections. He's having some lunches with Rodgers. I still don't see him as a top value target for a while, just because of how this Packers offense usually works out. So I think he's a good pick and hold, and you should be able to play him in the flex in the second half of the season. Robert Woods, 10th round. He's a lock for me in the 10th round. Easy. There's no question. He's a wide receiver, one of a team. He's great. Josh Palmer and KJ Osborne, we've talked about a ton on here. They're, second or their third options on their teams, but they're looking great. It's high value offenses. These are great, late stash wide receivers that could play in your flex on a given week. And again, an injury just boosts them to easy wide receiver 2 there. More like Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams, Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, all are getting a lot of work, or, with Jameson Williams' case, he's going to get a lot of work when he's back. Wan'Dale Robinson looks like the slot receiver for the Giants, whatever that matters. Alec Pierce is working as a good wide receiver 2 of this team, whereas also Paris Campbell's fighting for that role. So we'll see how that goes necessarily. In my opinion, I think Pierce ends up winning the 2 jobs, so I think he takes a lot of that. But Paris Campbell has been electric when he's been on the field, so which this offense desperately needs. I don't know what happened there, buddy, but I've kind of ran through the rest of the backs. I've ran through a lot of these receivers.
Okay,
just kind of going.
So what I'll do, so my internet went out really badly to where I had to restart my router and everything.
Sure.
So I apologize for that. Thank you for keeping it afloat. The receivers that I assume you haven't talked about are the 2 at the bottom here, Sterling Shepard, Zay Jones.
Have not.
Wonderful. Sterling Shepard, very good, still very good. Coming off an Achilles injury, activated last week, still working his way back. I think in the same vein as Wan'Dale Robinson, I think you're just kind of searching for the PPR upside of the Giants offense. Have you talked about Wan'Dale yet?
So I just kind of went over him quickly. So he's kind of won through camp. He's won the slot position role for this team. Shepard has not been a part of that camp, though. And Shepard is a slot receiver. So it's kind of a weird, dichotomy there of this team is clearly working for the future, and having Tony and Robinson being the absolute focal points of this offense, because Galladay is dog shit at this point.
He's all done.
Having them, along with Saquon, obviously, being the focal point of this offense is a smart way to build for the future. But I think Shepard's so good that he just gets reps, and I think he probably gets offloaded after some parts of this year. because he's just so talented. Like every time he's played, he's been by far the best player, in the receiving core of the Giants, and he's been a startable flex option for us every week. He was a DFS darling for us over the last 2 years. So I absolutely love Sterling Shepard. I just think they're trying to force him out almost. But that also is an upside because if he does go somewhere that needs receiver help, he will be a top level target for them. Speaking of slot role winning, Isaiah McKenzie, I kind of brought up, he's the slot receiver for the Bills. That last year was Beasley, who got 100 targets quietly on 80 catches or something like that. And 100 plus targets and 80 catches. McKenzie's obviously a little bit more explosive than that. And with a better wide receiver 2 now, with Gabe Davis, while there might not be like 130 targets here for him, I think there's a lot of upside for a deep stash of Isaiah McKenzie.
I think it's worth noting, too, that the slot receiver is the wide receiver 2 in the old offense, in the offense that Brian Daboll ran, which Brian Daboll over in New York now calling plays for Wandale or Sterling Shepard. So
which is why they're on the list.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And the only reason why they're on the list.
For sure. I agree with McKenzie. I was going to mention Zay Jones, kind of a forgotten name. If the Jaguars offense is going to be good, I still don't think that the defense is going to be so dominant that they don't have to throw the ball. They will filter through their tight ends. They will filter through the running backs. Christian Kirk is going to dominate the target share, but the second leading target getter in the wide receiver room is probably going to be Zay Jones. They signed him to a pretty big deal. They signed him away from the Raiders. I think that he was actually pretty good last year. He's had a couple of good years in the NFL, and I think that people are just kind of overlooking what he could be for that team this year. With your last pick, why not? Go see what he is week 1 and then cut him if you need to.
Yeah, and he's kind of been, I would argue, he's been the second best receiver through camp so far. With Marvin Jones kind of just being a consistent possession short option, Zay Jones is definitely more of a deep threat. And I think this offense needs to have those explosive options, and having him and Kirk on the field at all times is the explosive options, plain and simple. The only ones I didn't cover, Nico Collins, he should be the wide receiver 2 of this offense. Won't get a lot of top end, coverage or anything. It's an outside play, it's a flex play late. We just haven't seen a lot from him. There's some talent there, and there's some touchdown upside there. If they are a little bit better offense and can move the ball a little bit better, he is the bigger body. Him and Brevin Jordan would be fighting for those red zone opportunities more than, more than Brandon Cooks. There we are. And then Michael Gallup and DJ Chark are the only other 2 I didn't really go over. DJ Chark has looked good. We've talked about multiple times that he is going to be a good chance to have a flex option for you for the first part of the year, at least the first half, and maybe the whole season. It's the Jameson Williams that gives you some, back play on that. Whereas when he's back, I think they do try and force some targets there. That would obviously hurt Chark because they would basically play the same role, but Chark may be playing well enough that they don't do that. So, which from camp we've seen. And then Michael Gallup, he
might play week 1.
I don't think he plays week 1, and honestly, I don't think he plays the first couple of games, just because I don't think there's any need to rush him back. But he'll be the, target 2 or target 3 of this offense, and this offense desperately needs it, and he will get a lot of targets. He will be a flex option every week. Yeah. There's no question. I think you're getting a discount, and honestly, in a redraft, you're probably able to put him in an IR spot, so you get an extra discount, an extra value for picking him.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'll kick over to tight ends, and I can carry for a second here. I'll talk about the 2 that I put on here since you carried for a solid 5 to 10 minutes. Brevin Jordan, we just talked about him with Nico Collins. I actually feel like the Texans' offense is going to move. We kind of saw what their run game can be, and we know that was kind of happening without Brandon Cooks out there being the dude that he is. Brandon Cooks, I have him as a wide receiver 1. He's my my A1 this year, I believe is what I said last week. I don't even remember at this point. It's been a long week. But Brevin Jordan could also be a beneficiary of the Texans moving the ball because he is very good inside the 10 specifically, but inside the red zone, he's a very good move tight end. He's technically the tight end 2 in this offense behind Farrell Brown. Farrell Brown is going to be blocking quite a bit, and that means that they're going to be able to use Brevin Jordan in pass catching situations. I think he's a pretty good. I think I have him inside my top 15 tight ends, and there's a chance that he works his way into a tight end 1 season. What that means, who knows? But
and Brevin Jordan is a good after the catch guy, especially at the tight end position. So he again, there's a good chance that Brevin Jordan, Brandon Cooks, Damien Pierce, and Davis Mills to some extent, Nico Collins to some extent as well, are all decent fantasy options, especially as secondary, with Brandon Cooks obviously being an elite wide receiver too, but the rest being flex options or QB3 for you in a super flex with Mills, but a high end one maybe. This offense is going to be better than a lot of people think. I don't think this team loses 30-7 most weeks. I think they just get outscored because this defense is not good. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. And then my other one was Noah Fant. I think that Noah Fant hasn't been used in the preseason with Geno Smith a whole lot, and I understand why you might be a little concerned about that. But I do think that this offense has not really shown exactly what it wants to be, which is all the way an outside zone rushing attack that also thrives on play action. It thrives on play action rollouts, and it thrives on crossing routes. And I think Tyler Lockett specifically and Noah Fant are the two that are going to capitalize off those crossers because Noah Fant specifically is really, really good after the catch. And so getting him the ball in space, they're going to figure it out eventually. I think Disley's going to be on the field quite a bit still. I think they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They really only have 2 receivers.
It's their best set. Yeah, they have 2 receivers. They have 2 good tight ends. And you have rookie tackles. So it makes more sense to be in 12 personnel anyways.
Yeah.
We haven't seen this offense even close to unlocked. With no pun I actually intended there. Because they haven't had either running back that is in contention for starters. Obviously, Penny's a starter. But, Walker is viewed as possibly the future of this team. He hasn't been there either. So we really have gotten, the guys competing for RB3 out there every week. So they really haven't been able to run the ball much. And it's relying on these quarterbacks to do more. And that's why they both look terrible a lot of times, honestly, because neither of these guys can lead a team to a victory. They can manage a team to a victory, which we've seen multiple times from both of them, but they definitely cannot lead a team. And I mean, as much as we, love Lark's arm talent, he's now lost 2 quarterback battles when he easily could have won them. So whether he deserved to lose them or not doesn't matter. I think he's, going to be a career backup after this, just like Geno is, which is why. But a lot of those guys end up dumping down on the tight end a lot, trying to get extra yards, and Fant's the type of guy to do it. And when you have the running backs that can actually move the ball, the play action can actually work.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, everyone is off of Fant right now. You can draft him with your last pick. I just did it in a draft last night. And I feel good about it. Despite, there is some concern that they use Disley as the primary pass catching tight end, but they have to know that they're going to need explosives. Disley is not the he's a good receiver, but he's not Fant after the catch. And I think that they're going to get the ball in space and let their pass catchers do their thing. So I'm all in on Brevin Jordan and Noah Fant, man.
Yeah. And honestly, these 4 tight ends, I'll cover the next 2 here. But these, as well as Robert Tonyan, are, these are 5 guys to where, you could literally, if you don't get one of these top 6, or if you're one of the people to say top 3 tight ends, because, with Kittle and Waller having some injury issues here and there, if you don't get them, it's better for me just to punt a lot of the times. And if I'm doing that, I want David Njoku, I want Irv Smith, I want Brevin Jordan, I want Noah Fant, I want Robert Tonyan, I want 2 of them. gives me 2 shots for one of them to break out. If neither of them break out, then I'm working the waiver wire tight end, which is efficient anyways. If you don't have one of the top ones, which you're going to do. So for me, I think David Njoku obviously has been basically contractually fighting for targets most years and needing to improve with his hands, which he kind of did last year. Not great, but he's improved with his blocking tremendously, which is big for the scheme. And there's why they paid him to be the starting tight end. So I do think he gets used on like the last high-paid tight end of this offense. And then Irv Smith is the only tight end in his offense. While they do have 3 good receivers, this offense needs a good tight end. And Irv Smith has been poised to break out in this offense for 2 years now. And injuries stopped it last year. I think he was going to be a tight end 1. I think he's a tight end 1 this year. If it continues like that, especially if this offense does lean to the pass more, it's better for Irv Smith. And obviously, I love Brevin Jordan, Noah Fant as well, and Robert Tonyan is my A1. So I think all 5 are fantastic sleeper/value tight ends because that's what sleepers are. At this point, there is no sleepers. There's too much information out there for real sleepers to exist.
For sure.
Except Zay Jones, I think. That's
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I agree. Especially, I think quickly on the Irv Smith front, I think if one of Thielen, Jefferson, or Osborne were to go down, Irv Smith then assumes a role that gets him in the top 12 every week.
yes.
I don't know that he produces that way with all of them healthy, but we've kind of seen what Thielen is at this point in his career. Jefferson hasn't had any injury, bad luck, but I think it's worth noting that like if that happens, you have a guaranteed top 12 tight end, which is not something you can say about all these guys even on this list. So
no. So quickly, because I accidentally skipped over him because we talked about him a bit earlier. Raheem Mostert is going undrafted most places. He's going pick 182 on Sleeper, which I believe is undrafted even in 12 teams. In 16 rounds. It'd be really close. But
math.
I'm not doing that at 11 o'clock at night. So with Mostert, he's looked good. Obviously, Chase Edmonds has looked really good, and he's clearly the one. But Mostert will have a clear role in this offense as a between the tackles guy and getting a lot of work that way. Edmonds is going to be, a true like pass catching inside outside kind of back. And while I think Edmonds is clearly an RB2 and the best running back to have in this team, I think Mostert is a flex option for you, and you're getting him for free, and that is incredible. They cut Sony Michel because Mostert looks so good. If he does get hurt, whatever, what did you lose? In my opinion, but he is a great asset to have, especially if you get a guy like if you're drafting more of those possibly injury-prone backs, per se, like McCaffrey or Barkley, or the list goes on with them. But if you're needing another back late, and you're not going to want a lot of these backs in that round, at the 16th round, you're really not looking at any of the backs there. Unless you're reaching for some guy that maybe wins because of injury, where Mostert doesn't need an injury to win.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that'll do it. Is there anyone else you wanted to add or no?
No.
Okay, sweet. We won't talk about She-Hulk. We are watching She-Hulk as it goes along. Episode 2 was okay. It was fine. I need to see where it's going. I heard that the internet will break this week on the post-credit scene for what it's worth. So
we shall see. It's a weird show. I think there's a lot of potential, and they're trying to do a lot at once, which has kind of led to, I would say, some sloppy writing for the first 2 episodes. But again, it's 2 of multiple, so. We'll see how each episode goes.
I still struggle. I struggle with the CGI, man. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. So you feel bad for the visual effects workers, but
it's tough when you have a strong female lead, obviously being She-Hulk, and then you make such a point to kind of go over kind of brush over some like important like issues with women, and then at the same time you try to pretty up a Hulk to an extent. I mean, basically
Yeah.
perfect makeup for a Hulk and
It's
perfect
also
eyeshadow,
it's
perfect
also
like
a comic
perfect
thing.
hair. And it's like I know it's just like
Nikki and I have had the same conversation though. The hair, they didn't need to do the hair, man. Like they could have
no,
left her hair because her hair it's fine. It fits her better.
yeah,
It looks so strange and it's green, and they didn't do a good job with the effects. So
no. So
it's a bummer.
yeah, it's like I said, the writing's a little weird. A lot of the female issue stuff, which is very important to talk about. It's just it seemed forced at times, and
Yeah.
it did kind of. If you look through the internet and TikTok and everything, it did kind of come across the wrong way for a lot of people,
Yeah.
which is never great. But apparently, it gets better. Everyone I've seen that's actually seen the whole thing so far, like not just the 2 episodes, but actually got obviously the early release of it, just love the series. So even if they said sometimes the first couple weren't as great. So I do expect some good things.
Me too.
Hopefully Wednesday or Thursday.
Thursday.
Sorry, there's so many shows that are out right now that I forget which days are which.
Yeah, we need to get Randy on House of the Dragon. I'm all in.
We'll see.
Also watched The Bear, and I highly recommend it. If anyone is listening has not watched The Bear, it's one of the best 8-episode series that I've watched in a long, long time. It's that good. So, okay, I think that'll do it. We're going too long probably. So,
yeah.
Next week will be our week 1 preview. We will talk through the Thursday night football game and just kind of give. I don't know what else we're gonna do, but I assume that we'll talk about the week 1 games because that makes sense. So,
yeah, week 1 Thursday night preview starts this probably.
Yeah, we'll see. We might. I feel like maybe it's time to change up the start sits in a way that's a little different from how we've done it. But we'll come up with something. Get creative, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. I don't really have an idea for it just yet. But.
College football started last week, but for real starts this week. Ohio State versus Notre Dame should be really good. A lot of key games this week, and a lot of top end talent on display.
And we talked about Brandon Cooks a lot in this episode. Josh Downs is Brandon Cooks, reincarnated. So I can't wait to get into draft takes. We'll get there.
Tremendous.
Yes, going to be fun. All right, that'll do it for this episode of The Cut. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a review if you feel so inclined. We will be back on Monday talking through week 1 of the NFL. It is here. Football is here. Good luck with your drafts. This is the last week to draft. I have a lot going this week, so maybe early next week as well. But good luck with everything. Feel free to hit us up at C Williams NFL on Twitter, at R Hall NFL on Twitter as well. You can hit the podcast DMs, but I can't guarantee that I will see them. So DM me or Randy instead, please. Outside of that, we will talk to you next week. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you then. Later.